with us, but I'm unable to be there. So I shall share the screen and say welcome to everyone to our think tank meeting today. If you would like to share in the chat line which lands you are from today, where you're the local place where you are, that would be wonderful. And you can see that today we've got the story of two worlds. We're going to be talking about the metaverse and the universe. So, well, the environment, our local environment. So you can see this is the journey we will be going on today. So I'll start with our formal welcome, and we acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in all the places we meet today and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And wasn't it wonderful at the last election to see that we now have 8 Aboriginal women in Parliament? So we have 2 in the reps and 6 in the Senate, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. Hooray! Mm-hmm. And then just for those who may not have joined the meeting before, these are the links between gender equality and climate action. We have increased greenhouse gas emissions that are causing global warming and extreme weather events like the floods and droughts and storms that are triggering the social disruption that magnify any existing inequalities, including gender inequality. And Zonta Says Now works at both ends of the train to take climate action and close the gender gap. And together we're creating a gender equal, sustainable world by educating girls, advocating for women's rights and inspiring more female leaders, Julie. Anyway, we have a website which has a lot of our materials, the think tank, which is when we get together to discuss what we're doing, and our framework for action that keeps us on track. And over the last couple of years, we've developed lots of resources to help us on our way. Well, today we're going to have our first introduction to the metaverse. And this is Lan Tran. Lan is a member of the Zonta Club of Perth. And this talk today was triggered by an absolutely unreal conversation I had with Lan a couple of weeks ago. And I said, you've got to speak to the think tank to introduce them to the metaverse. Anyway, Lan gave me this summary, which I will share with you. Her superpower is that of reinvention. I just love that. As a former refugee, she has learned from an early age the importance of adapting and making the most of the existing circumstances wherever she finds herself. Her determination to overcome early linguistic disadvantage has allowed her to gain a double first-class honour in communication studies, which led to a multi-award-winning national sales and account management career in diverse industries for over 2 decades. Her ongoing quest for adapting to the new world order has led her to the metaverse and us as well. She's an integral part of Ninja Syndicate global reach and marketing team and is well placed to articulate the wonderful world of Web3, that's blockchain and crypto, NFTs, that's non-fungible tokens, and the phenomenon of play-to-earn crypto gaming. We're not training and providing direction to the sales and marketing force. Lan is building key relationships and securing industry partnerships to give supremacy, that's the gaming environment that she's working with at the moment. And XSyn, it might be pronounced differently, XSYN, which is AWS, which I think is Amazon working something for the metaverse, and giving the recognition they deserve for bringing a fresh, ambitious and proven platform for metaverse gaming. So Lan, I'm going to hand over to you. I'll stop the share. So as you're currently in Texas at the Consensus Convention, which brings together all sides of blockchain, crypto, Web3 and the metaverse. So I'm over to you. Okay, Lan?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Carol. That's a pretty comprehensive introduction. So I'm a bit humbled by that. Yeah, so I don't know in the room that we're speaking to if apart from the conversation I had with you, if others in this space are familiar with the term Metaverse and NFT and Web3. Okay. So I'm just gonna.
I would take a blank canvas approach, Lan.
Okay. In that case, what I do is I will keep it short within 10 minutes, just to give you a bit of an overview and a taste of what that means. And then it's something that we can actually explore later, bit by bit, because how you eat a pig, bit by bit. So that's really how I tackle it for myself. Elephant, pig, elephant. I just think that pig is nice and tasty. So basically, what the metaverse mean, there's so many ways that you can understand it. But ultimately, if you think of the progression of our technology, you have Web 1. So in the 1990s, you have Web 1, where you search for information. And so it's read-only information, and that's Web 1. Web 2 is where you can actually read information, but you can also create your information. So it's called user-generated content, and that's Web 2. And that happened more towards the 2008 to 2015. And, that is relating to Facebook, Instagram, and all those different Twitter and YouTube, all those different social media channels. But the read and write capability is quite centralized. So Web 2, it made overnight billionaires of a very small group of people, like Facebook and Netflix and Google, because you can read and write content, but you are using their platform. So they can de-platform you. And you have seen that example when Twitter de-platformed Trump, which is not a bad thing. But the flip side of it is that if you are a creator of incredible content and you are deemed politically incorrect, or you are deemed politically very controversial, or you write something that you deeply care about to a whole community, and the platform decide that it's not appropriate and cut you out, then that is a big risk for your right to actually articulate meaning. And if you live in a free society like where we are, it's not so obvious. But if you live in a more draconian society, then the fact that a platform can de-platform you and eliminate your voice is still a risk, and it's actually something that that is a Web 2 scenario. Web 3 is where we are now and where we're heading to. And Web 3 is where you can read content, write content, so user-generated content. But the difference between Web 2 and Web 3 is that we're moving into a situation of owning our own data, which means if you didn't like Facebook, because I don't know if you probably know already, but every time you choose to use Facebook and you put your photo in Facebook, you have already signed away your right to them being able to use that content how they wish. So they actually have ownership of the photo that you put inside. They haven't done anything bad with it just yet, but that can happen because they own that content. The other thing that Facebook do is they actually sell our data. That's how they actually, all these very customized advertising that is actually, that has been put forward in front of you, in front of your feed, is because Facebook has all these algorithms to understand what type of consumer you are, sell your data to certain corporation, so they have benefited from your data. And that's Web 2. Web 3 is where you can say, I create my content, I don't like what Facebook is about. You take your content elsewhere, find a different platform, all that content, all that history about what you are, that you have created for your family, like a Lego piece, you find another Lego platform and plug your data there. And that's what Web 3 means. And Web 3, Metaverse, is actually that is really more or less the definition of Metaverse and Web3. And what the Metaverse is about too is that everyone will try to give you a different definition of the Metaverse, the way they understand it and where they sit. And that's okay, because the Metaverse is still being defined. Yeah. So last year, around August, September, you noticed that Mark Zuckerberg just went out and just said, look, we are rebranding ourselves as Meta, because Mark Zuckerberg can see the writing on the wall that you and I, as consumers and user of a platform, will have the power to move our data elsewhere, because we do not like what Facebook does with that data and how they can manipulate us with their knowledge of our data. So Mark Zuckerberg can see the writing on the wall, and you can also see Facebook share has been steadily decreasing. So that's why Mark Zuckerberg came out and tried to own the concept Metaverse, so that way he can take us into the journey of using VR, Oculus Quest, so that he can continue virtual reality, so he can have, or Facebook, Meta, can have continuous control of, pushing data into our periphery. So that is just his definition, but it's not the definition. So that's really important to understand, that the Metaverse is Web3, and the Metaverse is that it's like a twin reality of where you are now. So you and I, we live in this 3D environment, eat, live, work, play, learn, earn. The Metaverse should be a virtual environment where you can do the same thing. You can get into that space and you also live, play, earn, learn, and actually interact. And the economy inside of Metaverse is almost like in real life, if not in real life. And what I mean by that is, I shared with Carol what I thought was a very, very interesting phenomenon of play to earn crypto games. I don't know if you have come across of those stories, but what happened is that during COVID, when in the Philippines and in third world, poorer country, what they actually found is that with the lockdown, a lot of them lost their job, or they couldn't go out because of the lockdown. And they ended up actually playing this game called Axie Infinity. And I'm not a gamer. I don't understand the principle of why you want to spend the time to play a game when you could do something meaningful. But that's just me being judgmental, say I, who work for a gaming studio. But what these Filipinos actually did was they played this game that is a crypto game, and when they actually when these creatures in the game actually get together, it form a different creatures, which it meant something. It meant it has value, and they could actually put it out in a different place to sell that value, and someone in a richer country will buy that, and actually they earn real money from them playing the game. And it has been, it has been documented that a lot of them have actually ended up earning more than they did in their normal job. And that is a phenomenon that you can actually look it up. It's called play to earn. And you can just look up in YouTube and, in different places. And that is when the world start listening and watching this trend. And COVID have escalated that process. And so play to earn is a crypto gaming space that allow, I keep on saying poor population, just for me, it's easier to explain that concept, is allow people in a poorer economy to participate, when they actually don't have that mobility to move around, especially when there was COVID. So that's really something to look into. Now, Carol asked me to also explain what the NFT is, because, you probably heard it around. NFT means non-fungible token, which I know the first time I heard it from my son in June last year, it had no meaning to me. NFT, non-fungible token, it doesn't mean anything. Once I realized what it really means is that an NFT is a certificate of authenticity, which means in the past, if you had put a photo of yourself or you put a painting yourself and it's out on the World Wide Web, and later on you want to say, well, I own that photo, I own that painting, I own that poem that I wrote, you kind of can't prove it. It's out there and someone can take over and say, well, no, I wrote that poem. And, you know, someone will have to investigate to see when it was posted, but you can never kind of prove it once it's gone out in the World Wide Web. So with the NFT, that is where it's actually changing the landscape of the virtual environment, where the NFT, because it's actually lock your photo, your painting, your poetry, your creation into a blockchain that sits, you know, it's a series of algorithmic codes inside the virtual world. And because when you put it on as an NFT, it gets locked into the blockchain, it means it cannot be corrupted because it's in a chain. It cannot, someone cannot corrupt it later. And that's what NFT is. It is a certificate of authenticity. And it's also, what is powerful about NFT is if you know how to create the NFT as a strategy to create value in the NFT, you could actually insert into that value the concept of royalty. So what it means is that artists and musicians think of, you know, hypothetically, Vincent van Gogh, and, you know, in the time, I didn't do very well with my art because, you know, I'm barely surviving and I'm desperate to sell one piece of painting. So when someone come along and buy it for $100, I'm just grateful because I haven't been earning anything for weeks. So I will sell the artwork. You know, 20 years later, that artwork will actually change hand and someone else recognize my talent and pay $20,000. And then later on, and generation later, it goes through Christie's, 2 billion. I, as an artist, and my family will never ever see the value and benefit of that, of my art and my creation. Someone else down the track and the middleman will benefit from it, but not me, the artist, the musician, the creator. What is powerful about NFT is that you could actually, inside that smart contract, when you've actually created an NFT and create value in it, is you put royalty in it. Just like authors, you know, how they are earning continuous royalty, so that every time it changes hand, it could be 5%, it could be 10%, it could be 20%. But it means every time it changes hand, I benefit, my family benefit, and generation benefit, which means distribution of wealth and income is actually more equal, as opposed to the have continually be the have, and the have not because of circumstance and because of lack of connection to the right people or in the right place, I would not benefit. So that's the value of the NFT. And I do have a few ideas. I'm not going to overwhelm you today about what we can do with it, but that's a very powerful understanding of what NFT means if you actually create value into it. And why it matters is that the metaverse and the NFT is like the key for us to get into the metaverse. Understanding what it can do and supporting projects that does it, or creating project ourselves that has an NFT will help unlock us into the metaverse and allow us to be more impactful with what we're trying to create for communities that we work with around the world. And that's really important. And I actually have, even in, just in the last couple of days since I've been in Texas, Austin, Texas, I have come across several projects that have worked with the NFT to make sure that there is equal distribution of wealth to the community that they want to support. And that is something that is, it is confronting to see how quickly we can change the world just from understanding that piece of the puzzle. And following up from this meeting, I will send a few examples for you to look at so that you can go, oh, okay, I can see what that means, because it's profound, but it is confronting in a way that we have worked so many years to, you know, slowly creating change. We still create change and it's still powerful, but it has been a slow and arduous process to get certain impact made and done. Whereas with this process, you are pretty much connecting with community, and it's about community being able to really become that spider web effect that is exponential. And that's the power of the metaverse and NFT.
That sounds great, Lan. Thank you. I'm watching people's faces and they go, oh, this is just how I did when we had this conversation originally. And the thing that did it for me was when you explained that basically people were playing like a video game in the Philippines, and as they reached a new level, they won tokens, which is like the NFTs that you were talking about, which they converted to Bitcoin. The Bitcoin they then used to feed their families. And that was the bit that threw me. I thought, because you actually had this metaverse, this unreal environment feeding families in the real world. And that's the implications of that with regards to the gender digital divide. You know, we could actually, the women are out there gathering the water and gathering the wood, and the boys are inside playing video games, earning money. And it just blew my brain. Anyway, so thank you very much, Lan, for introducing that. Did anyone have a quick question that they wanted to ask Lan? Yes, Suzanne, you're on mute. You're on mute, Suzanne.
So, Lan, is this like a possible answer to some of the employment problems around the world where we're saying, you know, people can't get jobs? Is this actually a way that they can earn income?
Definitely, definitely. In fact, the example that Carol has just pointed out is actually documented and people are doing it. And there is a whole new industry of guilds setting up to actually help these people from these countries to actually get into the games, get into crypto game to actually earn money for their family. The other day, I was in I was actually sitting, you know, listening to a panel where, you know, there was a speaker who was saying how it impacts Latin American communities. And he was pointing out that, you know, if you think like Mexico and, you know, and all those, I don't know my geography too well, but Mexico and those kind of country where there's, it's overruled by drugs cartel, and that the youth in those countries end up being mules, drug mules, because they don't have any employment opportunity and they're desperate to get out of their poverty. And what he actually said is that because of the crypto gaming, as you know, crypto gaming being now more prolific, and actually it's something that have proven to actually generate income for community, this is something that can be offered to the youth, and they are not having to, you know, resort to being drug mules when they can have an alternative way of earning income.
Interesting.
Interesting. That's great. Well, Lan, thank you so much for introducing us to the metaverse. We'll let people have time to absorb, and if you have any links that you'd like to send through, we can share them with the think tank, which would be wonderful. And when you're in the rest of Consensus 2022, carry on doing what you're doing and think about ways that we can actually use the metaverse to bridge the gap for poverty as well, with to make women less poor, which would be wonderful. And
I just want to say something as well, Carol, because I just want to say that we can actually do something now as well with regards to the metaverse. Just one final point there is that crypto gaming and play to earn is one aspect of it. And you know how I said to you that with Web3 metaverse, you actually have ownership of your content, of your data, and you have choice of who you want to engage with, you know, like which podcast you listen to, which music you want to stream your way. Well, there are actually different projects out there where they actually, if you actually plug into their ecosystem, and one of them is a project called Shenomic. It's like Shenomic, basically. And that project is where she collects a whole many podcasts about women, leaderships and, different way of supporting girls and women from birth to as they get older throughout their life in different communities. And there's podcast experiences where if you actually subscribe to listen to those podcasts, every time you listen to the podcast, an amount of token, they're called tokens, but it's like a representation of a dollar value that is actually deposited into your account. So that later on with that amount, you can actually say, well, I want to donate to this charity. So just something for you to think about is that we can have real impact just from making choices of what we listen to and which ecosystem that we plug into, we connect with, to actually have that opportunity, earn the token, and convert that into real money to go to community. And I know when I was speaking to her this afternoon, it basically means that every time you listen to a podcast, there's a certain amount that will go to woman or girl in a different part of the world that help them towards their education. Just because you listen to the podcast and you plug into that economy, you and me.
Brilliant. Send us an email about that one, Lan. That would be fantastic, because I'm sure we want to explore that further. I'm very aware that it's midnight your time and it's time for your bed because you're going to have a busy day tomorrow. But thank you so much for joining with us today. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I haven't overwhelmed you guys too much, because I was overwhelmed.
It's all right.
Alrighty.
Sometimes always the worst, and everyone will learn as we get you more used to the language. I think that's great, Lan. Thanks for introducing us to it. That's wonderful.
Alrighty. Take care, ladies. Thank you. Bye. See you now. Bye-bye.
That's great. Our next, we're going on now to, yes, you can see this. We're moving on now to Julie. I'm going to hand over to Suzanne, who's going to introduce Julie for us. Thank you.
So Julie has stepped in at the last minute to replace the speaker who was coming, and we're very grateful to Julie for doing that. So we're certainly not losing out by changing the speaker, I can tell you, and when, as you'll see when I read this out. Julie Lyford is the inaugural Chair of Women's Environmental Leadership Australia, WELA, and last year for the Women Taking Climate Action Award, we had somebody who was doing a leadership course from WELA apply for the award, and that's how we came across it. And this is an organisation we need to be aware of. So Julie brings over a decade of experience in a not-for-profit environmental leadership to the role, and that's just so important. As chair of Groundswell Gloucester, I hope I said that right, Julie. Julie was involved in leading the successful campaigns to stop the AGL coal seam gas field and open cut coal mine from going ahead in the Gloucester and Manning Valley catchments in New South Wales. So, wow, it's a pretty spectacular effort. Julie is a former councillor and mayor of Gloucestershire Council, a former registered nurse, an experienced board member and a WELA alumni. So I think it's also really interesting that Julie has been involved at local council level, and it's quite often quite difficult for us to work out who you talk to in local council about issues and what they can actually do. So to have somebody like that maybe in the future we can say, Julie, can you tell us something, would be really great too. So I'll hand over to Julie.
Thanks, Sue. I'm still a little overwhelmed by the crypto, metaverse, thinking there's something I need to learn from this, especially with fundraising. Wow, Yeah, that was fascinating. So yeah, and look, and deepest apologies from Lou. I'm not quite sure what has happened there, but Lou's very dedicated to doing wonderful things like this. So I'm sure that Lou would love to actually chat with you about what she does with WELA and other things as well. Basically, do you know anything about WELA at all? Would you like me to start with talking about WELA? Or
Yeah, start with WELA and
WELA.
explaining it would be great.
Okay, so it was, well, WELA, and now we're a company limited by guarantee as of last December. It was founded in 2016 as an annual development program for women in the environment movement. And I got involved in the 2017 cohort when, I'm not sure if anybody knows Margaret Blakers, who is pretty instrumental in the Greens and founded quite a few things. Was also very involved with forestry campaigns, etc. But Marg rang me up one day and said, "You don't know me and I've never met you, but I'd like you to do the WELA course." My response was, "This is odd." I said, "I'm sorry, I don't have time. I'm right in the middle of a campaign to stop a coal mine off the back of stopping coal seam gas field." And she said, "All the more reason that you need to do the course. We want you to come down and meet with us." So I still resisted, went to Sydney to find out what it was all about, was convinced to sort of do the course. And to be really frank with you, it completely sort of changed the way I did things. And the crux of it all was that until we learn to stop and rest and know who we are and own our power and own our skills and get rid of the imposter syndrome and understand, which I kind of had known from all of the organisations I'd worked with, but there is this incredible network of women out there who are working collaboratively, and there is no ego involved. We learn from each other. It's like this ever-expanding sponge. I know that sounds very touchy-feely, but it actually was instrumental in the way that I then led and was part of a team. Everything is teamwork. Nothing is done as an individual. It changed the way we did things, and we really focused on the fact that we had the power as a community with our experience and expertise to actually take the government and the companies to court and win. And since then, I've been championing WELA, and WELA alumni and lots of people involved with WELA have been involved in Sustainable Futures conventions that we've run in Gloucester, including the wonderful Millie Rooney, who is part of Australia Remade, which is another amazing program. And we ran our last 2019 Sustainable Futures in Gloucester based around the 9 principles of Australia Remade. And also the entire theme of the conference was based on First Nations peoples and Uluru Statement of the Heart, etc., which is part of the Australia Remade. It's the first pillar of Australia Remade's manifesto, basically. So WELA has been operating the annual program since 2016, and they consist of three weeks of, with COVID, that obviously became an issue, but you actually go to Common Ground. I'm not sure if everybody knows about Common Ground. It's in Victoria. It's a gorgeous mud brick, purpose-built place with rooms and meeting rooms, etc., community garden set up for activist organisations that need places to go, and the whole ambience and aesthetics of where you meet sort of contributes to that. And you spend 3 separate weeks together as a group, learning from each other. The first day is quite tricky, or the first couple of days, because you learn about the imposter syndrome. And my goodness, most of us have it in spades, and it's a really fascinating lesson to sort of go through getting rid of that imposter syndrome so you can be a more effective leader. And women, seems that men don't have imposter syndrome, but women have it in spades. So it probably is trivializing the program a little if I'm talking like this, but I think what's really powerful about the program is it creates change, and it creates change within the people, the women that are stepping up into those leadership roles. So a lot of Indigenous content, a lot of First Nations women are involved. There's a First Nations scholarship. There was in our cohort, we had someone from East Timor who'd been through the terrible times in East Timor, and she was really, really focused on environmental and social justice issues in East Timor. So there's a broad breadth of women that get to do the course and apply for the course, lots of NGOs. And also it's really important that women from corporate life understand and take part with what we're doing. And how yesterday I spoke to a researcher from the University of Adelaide who works in research at the interface between communities and corporates who want to actually come in and do fossil fuel extraction, etc. And we had a fantastic 30-minute chat. Without WELA, I probably wouldn't have even thought of talking to someone like that, because it would be, in my mind, it would have been compartmentalized to be, you know, the enemy, so to speak. Whereas no one's the enemy. Everybody's trying to work for the outcomes that they're involved in. And we all need to talk to each other at all levels in whatever we're doing. She was a little shocked, though, when I said, there is a point where communities say, no, we don't want to engage into that process. We're not interested in having that in our community, so we will not actually take part in that interface. And she hadn't quite heard that before. So, yeah, I'm probably digressing a little. The importance of the program is that there are women out there. The networking is huge. Part of the work that I'm doing with our now Gloucester Transitions group is we've developed an interactive website that hasn't gone live yet, where it's pulling together all of the networks of grassroots communities. We have the networks of NGOs, we have the networks of the corporates, but we don't have the networks of the grassroots NGOs. And often when people think that they're alone, they're fighting a fight that they're involved in, and nobody understands the weight of it and what's involved. If we can show that across Australia, and there are hundreds and hundreds of grassroots organisations working to protect their places and spaces, especially in the climate space, add to that the Strike for Climate groups, add to that all of the community garden groups, add to that the land care groups, and all of the people working in their own way to protect environments and look at climate issues, it's massive, it's huge, and it's so exciting to kind of be involved in that work. And that idea came out of workshops while I was with WELA. And so a couple of WELA alumni and I, and somebody who I met on the Guardian Australia Facebook page and threw the idea out to, she's actually created the website. And so I just get really excited about the networking. I think that is probably the most amazing thing. The power that women have at the moment, leadership-wise, let alone the election, which was very exciting, is phenomenal. And now I've read about your group, which is fabulous, the work that you're doing, how we all connect together and enable more women to do programs like WELA so that they can continue to reach the goals that they want to and beyond, because often you don't see the doors that you're going to go through because you haven't actually come to that door yet. Yeah. And we're growing as a group. We're growing as a board. We're looking for a couple of new board members as well, especially with fundraising experience. Our company secretary has just got a full-time job, which is really exciting, which means we're looking now for someone with that experience as well, although some of us will tide that over while we are doing that. We're looking for significant funds to go forward, because it's not enough just to have those three, that yearly annual program. So Victoria Mackenzie-Makar, our strategic director, who came up with the idea of actually forming WELA into a company limited by guarantee. Very exciting young woman, very amazing aptitude and future thinking. She's just incredible. that there'll be weekend programs. So already one has been run in Queensland, which was extremely successful. So we're trying to grow, but in a sustainable way, but also make sure that we have the capacity, and that all sort of relates back to funding and capacity of skills. Yeah, so that's the other exciting part of the program, where we're going to go from here. And it's incredibly inclusive, as I said before, of all cultures. It's, you know, not gender biased. It's, yeah, I feel really lucky to, have been tapped on the shoulder by an anonymous phone call from Margaret Blakers. And probably I need to let you know that, so how did I get to be asked by Victoria to come in as chair? So are there any questions before I sort of carry on? I realise I'm just getting excited about WELA here. Are there any questions, or shall I just sort
I
of...
think just keep going at the moment, Julie.
Okay, let me know if there's anything you want me to expand on. So
do you have children? Is there a lower, what's the lowest age you can go on a course with?
So that's just been something that's been asked about. So can you come on the course with your children? I think they're still trying to work out how that works, because it's a fairly
not with your
intense...
children. Not with your children, but what's the youngest age you can do a course? Do you have to be over 18, or can you have teenagers?
Yes, currently it's over 18, but that has been a question that's been raised.
Right.
Is it, you know, open to teenagers? And I think that's a discussion the program committee are having right at the moment. So I think that's pretty exciting, because I've worked with the Strike for Climate group, and you know, they're phenomenal. Manjot Kaur and all of those young women, they're just incredible. So I think they would have a lot to teach us, and certainly they would benefit from the networking and the mentoring.
I'll
And
just
that's the
interrupt you for a second. We've
Yeah.
also had the Student Strike for Climate talk to us and been a bit involved with them. And yeah, we totally agree. They are amazing young people.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, yes, I've stood in Sydney at the rallies and been on the stage with them, and I just think, you know, I refuse to think we can't get where we need to go. Yes, there's going to be some issues, but with the young women stepping up, we will get where we need to go, and it will be good. Yeah, so that's a very, very current discussion that's happening there. And the other thing that's really powerful is that you don't just leave the program and off you go. There's a mentor role and a mentorship role. So everybody thinks about who they would like as a mentor, and that continues. Do you want me to give you a bit of background as to why I'm there? Would that be helpful? So, okay, as a 18-year-old, I decided life.
No.
Worked in London for a while, had 3 children, and we've lived in Gloucester for 35 years, and it's a very conservative National Party electorate. I've loved it here. It's had lots of challenges. Our children have had wonderful childhoods here, grew up, went to the local public school, public high school, but always aware of the injustice and the social inequity. And so somebody said, have a go at, you know, running for council, which I thought would be fun. I got elected. I spent 3 years in tears because I was the second only other female. There were 2 of us, and the other female councillor was staunchly National Party, and they all saw me as a Green, or because I was an environmentalist. I'd started the Gloucester Environment Group in 1989 because I was concerned about climate change with a friend. And we went to the local newspaper and said, we'd like to start an environment group about climate change. He looked at me and said, everybody will think you're mad. but I reserve your right to put that in the paper. We put it in the paper, 50 people turned up, and that group still continues today with 400 members in Gloucester, doing lots of koala issues and lots of climate issues, etc. So I guess I kind of have been deeply concerned about climate since the 80s. And my family worked in the insurance industry, Lloyd's of London, in the 70s, where they were saying climate change is going to cause devastation and the insurance industry probably won't exist, you know, past that. So they've all known for a long time, as you all know. Local government was incredibly interesting, and I feel very lucky to have been a councillor for 17 years. I was mayor for 2 and chair of Hunter councils briefly, because the men on council didn't like my outspokenness with the climate change issues, and because we got a climate policy in 2007. They didn't like that, and so yeah, so it was a bit of a battle all along, but I learned a lot to stand in other people's shoes and see it from their position rather than fight them, because that wasn't working. We need so many women in local government. You know, there was one woman at a conference that I met who the men didn't speak to her at all. She was the only female in a out west New South Wales council, and the men refused to speak to her, told her she didn't belong there, she belonged in the kitchen. And this was in 2010. So we're still, rurally, we're still battling the patriarchy. I lost the mayoral role due to my outspokenness about the coal industry and the coal seam gas industry, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I realised that I'd learned as much as I needed to do, and now I was going to become an activist. And that's what happened. And Groundswell Gloucester, we worked with the EDO and 32 other organisations to beat both of those. They lost AGL lost $1.2 billion on the coal seam gas field mess that they created here. And Andy VC was actually pretty good. He actually helped us shut that down, and then they got rid of him, the most intelligent person in AGL, and I think they're suffering from that. And when we did the Rocky Hill fight, we actually won, and in February 2019, Judge Preston also, apart from refusing the mine on social impacts grounds, which was really powerful, a lot of First Nations representation within that judgment, huge amount, which was also a bit of a first. He also refused it on climate grounds due to scope 3 emissions being, you know, burnt offshore downstream. And that was one of the most significant climate judgments at the time that went internationally through all the media. The Minerals Council of New South Wales tried to get that rescinded through New South Wales Parliament. That led to a territorial limits bill, which quite a lot of us fronted up to Parliament House to present our case for why they should not change that judgment, and we won that as well. So it's the war is still there, but you just got to keep winning those games along the way. And when we'd won that, I was doing the Sustainable Futures work. I'm on a social impacts working group, and also working with the Next Economy. I do some consulting with them. Amanda Carl, who's just, you know, she's groundbreaking work from the Next Economy. They produced a report that's been taken very seriously on the circular economy and transitioning communities away from coal and coal seam gas and fossil fuels. That's brilliant work if you want to look that up. And Victoria rang me and said, I was on the Sunrise Project Board for 5 years, and that's the major re-granting organisation for all organisations, mainly NGOs, but a lot of grassroots organisations working in the climate space. I left there because I wanted to get back to more grassroots work, and Victoria rang me and said, hey, would you like to come and work with us and be chair of the interim board? And this is my happy place. WELA is my happy place. And so that's where I am now, and that's the story.
Brilliant. That's fantastic.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Julie, that is just amazing to have the resilience to go through all of those steps on your journey is amazing. How do you feel about Mike Cannon-Brookes with AGL?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think what's happening now is, especially with the younger generation who've got the cash and the sense that they can actually affect change, they're just going for it. And I think it's really important that he's getting in there, because he knows climate change is such a huge issue. He's got to just steamroller his way in there, and that's great. You know, it's so many different levels of affecting change, and there are so many. I get really uplifted by not just the Mike Cannon-Brookes, but the young woman I met in the street yesterday that said, oh, you know, I've got this great idea for reducing plastics in town. Do you think Gloucester Transitions would want to be part of it? And I think that's just as exciting. And I just feel this sense of hope that we will get there. And I just have to tell you about this. This is a book called 9 Lives for Our Planet. It's just being launched. John Watts is a local author who wrote the book. He also wrote The Town That Said No to AGL, and now it detailed the fight that we had and what happens to communities when you stand up to protect your places, and how smashed we all get with that, but you actually learn and grow more resilient. And that's, yeah. But this one is actually about 9 women, and Simone Marsh is the first woman in the book. Sue Higginson has just become a member of the New South Wales Legislative Council. She's a Greens member, but Simone Marsh was a whistleblower in Queensland who worked for the Queensland State Government, and it was in the department where they assessed the coal seam gas applications. She knew things were terrible and environments were being ruined, and as a climate issue, this was not the way to go. She was bullied and harassed to the point that she had a breakdown. It's all in the book. She was then taken to the fixated persons unit, which is a shocking thing. She survived all of that to tell the story. The first chapter will leave you so angry and inspired about Simone. She now lives in Tasmania. She works closely with Bob Brown. She is also a journalist now with Michael West Media, who is, you know, fantastic journalist exposing what's going on around Australia. There's also a woman, Dominique Jacobs from Gloucester, and why she's a foster mother of 5 children, a Bernardo's Mother of the Year runner-up. Why did she get involved and get arrested recently on top of a van blocking the road in Sydney? So it's a phenomenal book. And somebody said, oh, what's a pale, stale male writing a book like that for? And my comment was, because he's written it. It's fantastic. He's written it. Nobody else has written it. He's written it. So isn't it great? And Meredith Bergman has given the former president of the New South Wales Legislative Council, Meredith has given a forward in the book. Bob Brown has also written something, and I've put something there as chair of WELA on the back. But this is dynamite. And also Simone Marsh's story was picked up by Four Corners a few years ago. And I think once this book is read, there'll be questions asked, deeper questions asked. So it's, yeah, I think women, their leadership and stepping up and starting to really take power in the right way is exploding, especially with the recent elections.
Wow. That's brilliant. We'll put we'll put the book on the website so as people can get links to where it is. So I think it sounds like one is definitely going on my read list.
Yeah.
Superb. Did anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask Julie? I mean, I'd like to personally spend 3 days with her, you know.
I'm happy to chat anytime. Yeah.
which is brilliant. Suzanne, you're on mute, Suzanne. You're on mute, Suzanne.
With all the talk about gas at the moment and our dear gas companies saying, well, the answer really is to let us, you know, do more gas. What does the community do now? Just, you know, can our politicians, you know, control the gas companies and say, no, you know, that's not going to work. We need to go more renewables, not more gas.
Yeah, look, you know, we've met with Matt Keane, who's now the Treasurer of New South Wales, when he was the Environment Minister, and they know that gas is not the answer. The industry, the Minerals Council, is so powerful. They are an incredibly powerful organisation. Smear campaigns they run against communities, etc. But Bruce Robertson, who is with the Australia Institute, so if you follow the Australia Institute's discussions on the gas industry, that's where you'll get the key facts and everything. IEFA, also International Energy, Tim Buckley, he talks mainly on coal, Bruce talks mainly on the gas. But the whole thing is now that there is a lot of gas, it's just all committed to offshore, it's all committed to overseas. And all the contracts, etc., were set up that way, whereas not with WA. WA set up a domestic reservation policy. The whole thing sheets back to embedded poor politics, but also one of the things we've really become so aware of, and it sounds like so simple, but especially with the coal seam gas fight and then Rocky Hill, is that the Minerals Council have embedded people within state government departments, and then they influence the politicians to make sure that these industries go ahead. And we've exposed that. We've exposed that in both books, the Town That Said No to AGL and this one. And in fact, what we do and what I do is when we do a lot of advocacy with politicians in Canberra and New South Wales, working with other women in this space, like Dr. Anne Polina in WA. She's an elder, and we actually take our documents. So we make sure that we've got scientific documents developed by the community and others who want to help. And I go to the chief of the EPA in New South Wales and I say, you know, if this coal seam gas field goes ahead, here is a document that you cannot refute. It's completely referenced. It's full of scientific facts. This is what's going to happen if you frack here. This is what's going to happen here and to 70,000 people downstream in the Manning catchment. I hold you personally and morally culpable for what you're going to do. You can't speak to me like that. I said, yes, I can. I pay your wage through my taxes. I will speak to you politely and considered. You cannot refute this document, and you are morally and ethically culpable in your role if you don't take notice of this document. They don't cope. They don't cope. So I do speak to a lot of organisations. I went to Victoria to speak to the group that was trying to stop the AGL gas terminal from coming there in that beautiful Ramsar wetlands area. And they had all this expertise and knowledge. It was just, they were fabulous, but no one had produced any documents. And I said, without your documents, you can go and talk to people and media and say you don't want this to happen, but you've got to have your facts and you've got to have why it shouldn't happen and what you think should be done instead of this.
Yeah, it's great advice.
That's great.
Yeah, and so with the Next Economy, I've been to Toowoomba and a couple of places with Amanda and their group to say, not only did we not have that industry, we've actually grown without it, and this is why we've grown. These are where the jobs are coming from. This is where our community is now benefiting from not having that fossil fuel, because it's all based on jobs, economy. So when you can show that due to renewables, transition, and what happens when you actually don't have these destructive practices and companies in your place, that's the story you've really got to tell, not why you don't want it, because of, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, really important stuff to know.
Very wise. Julie, that's we've really appreciated your time today, and you've given us some really good points to consider. You know, getting the facts is one of the first steps of our framework for action, so it was really good to see that being reinforced. And also your determination and persistence is just to be admired, and I think I can see us working far more closely with WELA in the future, because I think we've got so many things that are aligning between our two missions. So I think that's fantastic.
Julie, if you've got time to stay on for a bit, we'll talk about the Women Taking Climate Action Award.
I'd love to.
Really
I'd love to hear about that. And conversely, if you need any more, yeah. So my story is just one of hundreds out there, and WELA's really fostering that. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Well, I'll move on, because what I was wanting to do, I hope my screen's sharing properly, is I just wanted to reflect a little bit, because we're coming to the end of our first biennium. And I started off my journey basically with stuff I was doing at work and reading The Future We Choose and finding the chapter on gender equality and climate action in there, and realizing that Zonta had a role. Having the conversation with Judy and Sandra, Sandra's our district governor, who created this position of futurist for me to try and figure out a way of Zonta taking part of reducing the problems for women in climate change. We invited everyone to join the think tank. 22 of us joined first of all, and we surveyed each other to develop our framework for action. Do you remember these days? Anyway, we came up with the mission for what we wanted to do, and we had our first think tank in October 2020. And we finalised our first framework for action. Over the last 2 years, our logo has evolved a little bit. We started off with climate action, then we got a bit of pushback because people said we were not an environmental group. Our first mission is with gender. And we went to gender equity and climate action. But a lot of Zonta International's work is framed as gender equality language. So we changed it to gender equality and climate action. And that was all in the first few months. We set up a website with a start-off website with SurveyMonkey, and now we have the WordPress site. And this was our first think tank meeting in November 2020, which was great to see. And we've done some creations. We had the banner, which we produced with the mission on it. And we also had the workshops that we did in that first year, where we all spoke to groups in our own areas using information from a central PowerPoint. And we had the brainstorm team that sort of helped behind the scenes to shape things. And meanwhile, Jasmine was creating her own young think tank member, and young Badri joined us at the June meeting in 2021, which was lovely. And then our publications, we had the framework. We had lots of leaflets, online leaflets that we developed, and that was mostly due to Bronwyn and Suzanne's efforts behind the scenes with those. And then we had the newsletters. We started off doing them monthly and then put them to 2 monthly. So we've now done 12, which I thought was quite interesting. So we're slowly getting there. We did a baseline survey of members, and we found the areas that we could actually focus in on to help activate members, to get them interested in the area. And we realized that we had got a lot of things here that we could actually encourage people to have the conversations about climate, because that's one of the best things you can do. And we've had Zontians that have spoken in the last couple of years. You know, we had Jasmine, who's now Gore ambassador. We had Suzanne with her amazing experiences from a young woman all the way through to now working with climate change. Bronwyn taking local action with her council. And we had Janice, who was an environmental defender. We had Christine, who was working with the Environmental Protection Authority in South Australia, Pia, who's on the call today from Sweden with the meteorology, and we had Vicky Carmen Brown, who'd worked all over Australia, and also Kay sharing her journey of 50 years in Zonta. And then we also had speakers, expert speakers. I mean, last meeting, we had the Green Ninja himself. We had Eugene Cordero from the USA with his training course, Dr. Helen Brown with the work that she's been doing in the Pacific, Alana Mountain, who is working with Watch, Isaac Goddard from the school strikes. And we had Diane Krall, who had been told us about behind the scenes with the COP conferences and electric vehicles, the financing of them. And do you remember the video that Val shared with Matilda Goodburn, that wonderful young girl who had presented, who developed the little issue? So children had a big issue version. And then we had Zonta, the club award that Melbourne on Yarra were doing. Bunbury Club has been doing a lot with recycling and advocacy. Our club, we planted 500 trees for our 50th anniversary just the last month. And we also, the election was a big deal. We tried to inform people so as they could get the information and also participate in mail outs and surveys and petitions. And it was amazing to see that that election was decided on climate change, gender equality and integrity. And then the District 23 conference last year with Natalie Isaacs speaking and Ginny Tan from Sister Works and our MCG Claire Flanagan-Smith, who facilitated the session, and her company sponsored the session as well. Then we had the big leap. We had, I spoke at the Zonta International Women and Climate Change Seminar, which was a world event facilitated by a Zontian from Uruguay. The Zonta International president was there, Fleur Newman from the UNFCCC Gender Unit, Alicia Godsberg from UNICEF in the USA, and Mabel Mack from Hong Kong, where we all shared what we were doing in this space. After that meeting, I had emails from Bahamas, Germany, and Canada, and the emails with the USA caucus, the USA caucus being representatives from all the districts in the USA, representing 7,000 Zontians. And they had adopted our Zonta Says Now website and worked towards setting up a climate change committee. So that's a little reflection on the biennium, which takes me into the international collaboration from there. So we've been working really closely with the USA caucus and District 25, which is India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh and Nepal. Together, we presented at the non-government organisation Commission for the Status of Women 50th anniversary event online, and all about introducing Zonta Says Now. And we're now working together to do 2 workshops in Hamburg later this month, in a couple of weeks. I've also spoke at the launch of the USA think tank, Zonta Says Now think tank, and at the Zonta District 5, which is Ohio, Kentucky and West Virginia workshops. So separate to the workshops team, we have a rollout team internationally for Zonta Says Now, with also members from Bangladesh, Germany, India, Pia from Sweden and the USA. We're using the Zonta Says Now statement on climate change, a gender equality issue, to guide our work. And we're looking at building a global Zonta Says Now working group, so as we can create a communication strategy and structure and incorporate Zonta Says Now on the Zonta International website, and look towards having potentially a global event, not this year, but next year, before COP28 in Dubai, and bring in all the districts together on a workshop to plan and organise what we can do in the next biennium. We want to align things with the Commission for the Status of Women 66 recommendations from the webinar that we spoke at. And these are the areas which we are looking to focus in on in the next biennium. So we may find that the Zonta Says Now might change to gender equal climate action. So as we clearly show that we're working in the climate action space and how it impacts on women in that climate space. And so we might get a bit of change in that space. We just watch and see. So I just wanted to bring you up to date with that, and also report that we had the Area 4 workshop in Adelaide just a couple of weeks ago, and that went down, Zonta Says Now went down very well, and I was hosted by Leslie Sweetman, and I had a fantastic weekend. And now I'm going to hand over to Suzanne to talk about the Melbourne on Yarra award. I'll come off screen share, Sue, and it's over to you.
Thank you. So the Women Taking Climate Action Award for 2022 is now open, and it closes on August the 26th. So the idea of the award is it's a recognition award, it's a $1,000 award, is to recognise a woman who is basically involved in climate change action, that engages with women and contributes to global efforts towards climate change, innovation and mitigation. So they could be working in quite a number of different areas, but basically mitigation, adaptation, communication, advocacy, service would be areas that they could come from. So the idea is that the person who applies describes basically how their action, work or project contributes to global efforts towards climate action. They try to demonstrate innovation, advocacy or communication and service action. And then they write another 500 words on how their project engages with women, how it sort of supports women or what women are involved in it. And then they give a bit of a general overview of the last few years for whatever organisation or work that they're doing. So last year we had applications from throughout District 23. So we had applications from Western Australia, South Australia, and Margaret Hender was the winner last year, who is actually helping communities do renewable energy projects, providing some funding that sort of keeps ongoing when it's repaid. So she was rather fantastic find. And we had applications from Tasmania. We had an application from somebody doing a leadership course at WELA. We had applications from Victoria, and they were all really good applications. So it's quite difficult when you get down to that point to make decisions. But one of the things that has come out of last year is that we have made lots of really important connections with people. So even people who applied who didn't win the award have now become a part of our resources, and we're a part of their resources. And I think that's a really important thing about the award. I mean, the other thing is that we're just finding out, as Julie said, how many incredibly fantastic women there are out there in this space. So Carol, I think, has been forwarded the award, and I think Carol's forwarding it to other people. Yeah. So if you could take it to your clubs, or not just even your clubs, people that you know who might be interested, it would be great to have as many people apply as possible, and it widens obviously our knowledge of that world too. So the other thing about the award is that I asked Sandra Burns to take it to District 23 to see if we could get it made a District 23 award rather than a single club award. And the basis of that was that every club, if every club provided at least $30 for the year, we would actually be able to fund the award ongoing at $1,000. Sandra, at the moment, that has gone out to clubs as an option. Sandra is following that up, and most clubs are quite happy, it seems, about that, and have offered at least $50. So hopefully that will be an ongoing source of funding, and the Zonta Club of Melbourne on Yarra will look after those funds, and we will know hopefully in advance of the award each year how much money we've got, and we can sort of tailor it to that much money. I think it's a great thing for us to have and do. So please get the word out there to get some people applying. And if they do have any issues or anything they want to talk about, please put them on to me. I'm very happy to talk to people and help them.
That's great, Suzanne. That's it's a wonderful initiative. And we had Alana Mountain was a speaker, was one of the applicants, and she just inspired us immensely with her talk about Christmas time. So so that's really good to see. And Did anyone have any questions for Sue about the award? No? Okay, that's fine. Well,
I'll just say, Julie, I mean, I'm sure the leadership team in WELA could each apply for it as well as the applicants.
no, that's great. That's great. Just keep us on track, and we're having the competition for the images, and Vicky Carmen Brown sent me through this lovely image, but we're not sort of promoting the competition at the moment just yet. We're waiting until after convention just to see what comes out from the rollout internationally of Zonta Says Now. But it was a beautiful photograph, so I thought I would share it with you. And so the other business I'd like to raise, we're obviously celebrating the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, and just be aware that there are funds out there for the tree planting. And Natalie Isaac's new book is due out on the 7th of July. It's delayed a little bit. And so look out for that. And this quirky one, which I thought intrigued me today, my sister shared it with me from Britain. And it's in Sweden. They're training crows to pick up cigarette butts. And they said a startup company to train crows to pick up the butts and fly them to a device that would dispense food treats as a reward. Given the risk that birds could swallow the butts, the project will also assess the health impacts of the litter gathering. Anyway, I just thought it was just amazing to have be training birds to pick up litter. So it's a bit quirky, but I thought it would give a smile to you all anyway. And then the last bit of news is just in the last hour before this meeting, I had an email from Megan Radovich at the Zonta International office just to say that the Zonta Says Now workshop is going to be live streamed. And I'm just confirming with her if it will be recorded as well. So as the people in Australia who are unable to attend at the time zone in particular, will be able to see what we do. Because they're not live streaming all of the workshops, they've just selected a few. And we've been lucky to actually be one of the ones to be selected, which was really good. Because the time that we're speaking for that particular workshop is midnight in Tasmania in Victoria. So I know Lan got up at midnight tonight to speak earlier on today, but I wouldn't put that on everybody. So our next meeting is on the 20th of August. And so that will be in the meeting notes, which is this PowerPoint presentation with notes added to it. And that will also contain the link. So, so just be aware of that. And also a reminder that the link to the recording of the video is on the front page of the notes for each of the meeting. So you just click on that link on the front page of the notes for each of the meetings, and you can see the video of the recordings of the meetings. So did anyone have anything else that they would like to share before we finish today? Val?
I just want to wish you well for Hamburg. I'm sure you'll be absolutely brilliant and blow people away, but mainly having started all this off, that you will really engage with people to the extent that you enthuse them to take up arms and do something for climate action, not just climate change.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Val. I must admit, I fly out on Monday, and it's all becoming a bit close and a bit real now. And I'm very mindful of what Julie was saying about imposter syndrome. I'm thinking, like, go out there, girl, and just do it. But it's such a privilege, and I know that none of this would have happened unless we'd had the support of everybody in the think tank on every step of the journey. And that's just been absolutely given me the strength to even be brave enough to do this. So I thank you all. Thank you.
So just to add to that, I think one of the great things, and I think I probably hadn't really thought about it that much until Julie said it, is that, you know, women, we do work together as a team. We don't sort of have our egos out there. It's like really interesting, and it's great.
No, it's been lovely. And I must admit, it has been such a privilege in the last few months just to get to know the other Zontans from other countries and just sharing with each other. And it's just what we learn, and the Americans, what they're doing in the advocacy space is absolutely amazing. So I hope to be able to learn from them and bring it back to our group. And there's just so much happening. And Eric in India, what they've been doing there, and in Bangladesh, we all breathe the same air, and it's just wonderful that through Zonta we're getting the international part of Zonta. We're actually experiencing it through our clubs and through our think tanks with Zonta Says Now, and that just gives me enormous satisfaction.
I should just say, when you just mentioned America, that reminded me, Eugene sent me an email saying that Green Ninja has now raised over $500,000 for their education project, which is great. I mean, he would like a little bit more, but he's very happy with that. That's great. And he's just had 2 new long-term contracts for the education program. So that's great.
Oh, that's marvellous. That's marvellous. Well, today we've actually really learned about our current living world that we breathe and eat in, and to be exposed to Lan's virtual world of this alternative universe that people can exist in is just it's just stretched our imaginations, I'm sure, today. But thank you to everyone for joining in today, and particular thanks to Julie. I think we've all learned so much from you and your journey through WELA, and we look forward to catching up in the future.
Thanks for having me.
So thank you, everyone, and we'll sign off, and we'll give you all the stories of what happened in conventions behind the scenes at the next meeting. Okay, so okay, I look forward to you having have a good couple of months anyway. See you in October.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.